second season of The Mandalorian recently came to an end on Disney Plus, and once again follows this lone Mandalorian as he goes on various adventures with the child, or as he's more commonly referred to as, Baby Yoda. For me, season 1 of The Mandalorian was fine. It was a decent viewing experience that was pretty entertaining for what it was. However, it was very clear that they were still trying to find their footing with that season. They were still trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. And you're going to get that with any first season of a show. The majority of that first season is going to be mostly spent trying to figure out what works and what doesn't, so by the time they get to the second season they can just get on with stuff. And that's pretty much the main issue that I have about season 1 of The Mandalorian, because it very heavily followed this very specific format of each episode is a different adventure for the Mandalorian. And though it did work for season 1, going into season 2, I wanted them to definitely start changing stuff up, because even though that format works for that first season, because again, they were still trying to find their footing and figure out what would work for this show, though it works for that first season, I don't think doing the same thing again would particularly work for the second season. And luckily, they didn't do that. You get that format for, say, maybe the first 2 to 3 episodes of season 2. It pretty much continues that same formula that worked for the first season. But very quickly, from, say, the 3rd or 4th episode onwards, it very quickly ditches that old structure in favour for a more traditional overarching storyline that pretty much becomes the focus of this second season from that point onwards. And I'm really glad that they decided to do that for this second season, because again, even though that formula may have worked for the first season, if they'd kept doing that for season 2 and even season 3, it would have got old very, very quickly. So the fact that they very quickly ditched it after 2 episodes of season 2 and went for a more overall and generally focused storyline, I thought was a massive improvement. And whilst we're on that point, I might as well just say this. Season 2 of The Mandalorian improves almost every single aspect that was either wrong or not quite right with Season 1. It basically takes everything that did work about Season 1 and just kind of makes it 10 times better and more entertaining. Because, I'm going to be honest when I say this, Season 2 of The Mandalorian is the most fun I've had with anything Star Wars related since Rogue One. Rogue One was genuinely the last time I watched anything Star Wars, themed, that I genuinely was fully on board with and had a ton of fun with, and also found it incredibly entertaining. Everything since then, like The Last Jedi, Solo: A Star Wars Story, or The Rise of Skywalker, though they were fine when I first watched them, they very quickly became pretty forgettable experiences, and the more I think about them, the less fun I have thinking about those things. Whereas The Force Awakens and Rogue One, I still have fond memories of, despite both of those movies having quite a few flaws. And The Mandalorian Season 2 is genuinely the best Star Wars has been since those first 2 recent Star Wars movies, Rogue One and The Force Awakens. It's definitely the most fun I've had with Star Wars for a long time, that's for sure. And that's because they just know what they're doing with The Mandalorian. And Season 2, like I was hinting at a minute ago, because Season 2 they now have a very clear set goal and path, and they now know what works about the show, and they can kind of use that and just do what they want. You very much feel that in this second season. And every episode just gets better and better and better, leading to a finale that genuinely had me speechless. Like, I haven't been that breathtaken by Star Wars since seeing The Force Awakens in cinemas back in 2015. And the fact that something Star Wars related has been able to do that to me, again, for the first time in a long time, is a nice breath of fresh air. There are so many aspects in Season 2 that feel so much better than they were in Season 1. The directing and overall cinematography of the show just feels a lot more confident than it was in the first season. Even directors from the first season who come back for Season 2, genuinely their episodes feel a lot more tighter and better because of it, especially Bryce Dallas Howard, who in the first season directed one of the weaker episodes. However, in this season, you can tell that her directing has improved, and her episode in this season actually ended up being a pretty damn good one. But yes, everything from a visual perspective is still as good as it was in the first season, but just feels a lot tighter and more concise and just overall more confidently helmed. The score by Ludwig Göransson is just as good as it was in the first season. If anything, though, it's a lot more varied this season, which is another thing I quite liked about the music for The Mandalorian Season 2. Whereas in the first season, he was very much setting up his own unique sound and style for the show. In the second season, he starts to experiment with other types of film score styles, rather than the traditional Mandalorian score that we have come to know and love. And I really like that he's tried that throughout this season, because there are certain scenes throughout Season 2 that might not necessarily require the traditional Mandalorian score. It might require something different or something from a different style of music, and he does experiment a little bit with other forms of film score music, and I really did like that about the show. And all the performances as well are just as good as they were in the first season, especially Pedro Pascal as the title character. I really felt for him in this season. Without going into too much detail, there are points throughout this season, especially near like the back end of it, where the amount of emotion he is able to portray, you know, just by wearing a helmet is really, really convincing. And his relationship with the child, or Baby Yoda as it's so commonly called, genuinely feels a lot stronger in this season than it was in the first. Because in the first season, it just kind of felt like something that he was doing just because. But in this season, that bond between the two of them feels a lot more real, so that when shit hits the fan in the later part of the season, it really does hit you emotionally, and a lot more prominently than you're actually expecting. One thing that I absolutely loved about Season 2 as well is that it made more of a focus of connecting itself to the wider Star Wars universe. And it thankfully didn't do it in a way that was like, hey, you see this thing? Yeah, you remember that? It's pretty cool. You see this person? Yeah, remember them? Yeah, they're really cool, aren't they? It never felt like that. It never felt like it was doing it for the sake of nostalgia. Whenever it connected itself to the wider Star Wars universe, it always felt like it was doing it either for the sake of the overarching plot or for the sake of world building. And I'm so glad that they were able to do that so often throughout this second season and have it just flow naturally with the general pace of the show. It never felt like it was interrupting anything. Whenever a certain thing or a certain person would crop up throughout this second season that very heavily links to wider Star Wars lore and other things that you're more common with Star Wars, it genuinely felt like it was doing it because there was a point of it doing that. It never felt like it was just showing you a thing for the sake of like, oh yeah, this was cool, wasn't it? Yeah, do you remember when Star Wars was good? It never felt like that. And I'm so glad that they did that with this show, because in Season 1, you didn't really get much of that sort of thing. It never felt like it was attempting to connect itself to the wider Star Wars universe or the other Star Wars films or properties out there. It just kind of felt like it was its own thing, which again worked for Season 1. But with Season 2, the fact that they are now making a very heavy statement by doing it so often and frequently throughout this the second season of this show just shows that they are planning something big for The Mandalorian, and that there is a very clear and set path that they are going on with this show, and I can't wait to see where they take this show in the future, because they've left it open for a ton of possibilities, not just for this show, but other shows that could be springboarded off of the back of The Mandalorian. Overall, The Mandalorian Season 2 is probably the most fun I've had with anything Star Wars related in quite some time, and has kind of restored my faith in Star Wars a little bit, especially after the crucial blow that was The Rise of Skywalker. I feel like The Mandalorian Season 2 has kind of patched that over a little bit, and yeah, this is probably the best Star Wars has been since Rogue One or The Force Awakens, which is why I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. This season just improved every single aspect over the first season in almost every single way, but has also left enough room for them to expand upon this show and make it even better for the future, which again is something I look very forward to in the coming years. So guys, that was my review of The Mandalorian Season 2. I hope you enjoyed it. And one thing I very quickly want to just talk about, for those of you that maybe didn't see the recent tweet that I put out there, as much as I want to see Wonder Woman 84 and do a review for it, I won't be able to do it. It's not through choice. I really want to get to a cinema and see that film because I'm genuinely excited for it. But unfortunately, I just won't be able to, because in the UK, we are going by a tier system at the moment because of the pandemic. If you're in tier 1, the restrictions are somewhat lighter. Shops and cinemas and all that are open as usual, and you're able to go out and about and do mostly normal things. However, if you're in tier 3, it's the complete opposite, and it's almost basically a miniature lockdown. All shops, all cinemas, all restaurants are closed. You can't go out unless it's for food or essentials, and you're kind of just stuck indoors the whole time. And unfortunately, the area I live in the UK got put into tier 3, which means I can't get to a cinema to go and see Wonder Woman 84, and I wouldn't be able to go out anyway, regardless if a cinema near me was open. So yeah, as much as I really want to see that film and do a review for it before the year is over, I won't be able to, purely because I'm in tier 3 and I can't get out and see it. So I thought I'd just give you guys a heads up if you didn't see that tweet that I put out there. So yeah, I won't be doing a review for Wonder Woman 84 anytime soon. Apart from that though, if you liked the video, then give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Bye.